We'll start over. I'm Kevin Walters. I'm the president of Allen Hancock College. I'm here with Gloria Soto, city councilman and director of the Future Leaders of America here in Santa Maria. So we wanted to welcome you to this. And Gloria, you want to say just a couple of logistical ideas first?
Hi, everyone. It makes me so happy to see all of us here today getting together and celebrating our beloved friend and colleague and family member, Kate Adams. I want to start by acknowledging the presence of her family here today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for letting us be a part of Kate's life. And again, thank you to all of you for making time in being here today. We have a program where we'll have folks that are former students, current students of Kate's, organizations that she was heavily involved with as a social justice warrior, and a couple of words from her colleagues as well as her family. So again, thank you for being here, and let's continue to honor her memory.
All right. Thank you, Gloria. I want to give you just a couple of nuts and bolts of how of what we're doing. There is a little bit of food and a little bit of wine and water in the back. There's a video booth back here where you can record a message for Kate, and there are professionals there to help you send a message to Kate. There are restrooms inside this building to the back here. And also I want to thank Carmen Camacho from my office, who's agreed to be our translator. For those of you who are listening to the translation, Carmen asked me to tell you she's not a professional translator, and she's going to do the best she can. So, and she'll be great. Before I introduce some of our colleagues, I wanted to say a couple of words about Kate from my experience. And I wrote it down because I didn't want to ramble, but I'm afraid that Kate's watching and grading this. So, Kate was a positive force in our college and a pillar in our community. Her impact on thousands of students in our community cannot be overstated. Every transfer student who took her class was more than prepared to take on the rigors of a four-year institution. One of our colleagues told me about the impact Kate had on her daughter, now a student at UC Berkeley. Kate was so important to her success, I don't know how I'm going to tell her. All of us have lost a good friend and mentor. As I scrolled through my text messages with Kate, it was several years of conversations about social justice, critical thinking, celebration of the work done by her colleagues in the English department, and, if you know her, even a little bit about bourbon. One of the few pandemic highlights I will always remember is Kate staying online after Zoom meetings, and we'd solve the world's problems, or she would helpfully coach me on how to better support our LGBTQ students, or focus my thoughts on improving social justice. Kate was committed to creating citizens, people who would thoughtfully engage in public dialogue, even if you didn't agree with her point of view. Kate had recently joined the Santa Barbara County Redistricting Committee. The chair of that committee called me upon hearing the news and said, Kate definitely had a point of view, but she listened to others and was always thoughtful. Exactly what you would want in a committee member. Kate's ability to listen had no barriers. Just before the pandemic, I invited Kate to come to my office and meet with a community member who is similarly inquisitive, but the polar opposite of Kate politically. What was supposed to be a 30 or 45-minute conversation turned into 3 hours. And I heard from the wife of my friend. It was not a debate. There was never a raised voice, just conversation. That community member wrote me this week and said, I actually had on my list of to-dos to contact you to set up another robust discussion of the current state of affairs. I have no doubt that her absence will leave a hole in many folks' universes. Although we only briefly met, count me as one of them. That's the impact Kate had in just a couple of hours on one person. Now, multiply that by 25 years, and it becomes impossible to overstate Kate's impact on our community. Kate made our community more intelligent, more compassionate, and more fun. Kate made me a better college president and a better community leader, and we're all going to miss her. Excuse me. Next up, we have a couple of her colleagues from the Allen Hancock College English Department, and they'll just come up in order. We'll start with Janae Demick, and then Jim Reed will follow that, and then I will introduce some students who are here to speak today.
Good afternoon. So I wrote this speech yesterday, and I think I revised it about 15 times in, an English professor way. So thank you, Dr. Walters. I also wanted to thank Patricia Solario. Where are you? There she is. Okay, thank you so much from the fund. She did a lot of the heavy lifting for this event and gave a lot of people time and space to grieve while she took on the brunt of that work, and I just wanted to thank you personally. At the beginning of this pandemic, Dr. Walters said something that still sticks with me. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, when there's an emergency, an organization will default to the level of its training. I found myself thinking in a similar vein this past week. During times of grief and sadness, an organization will respond according to the strength of its community. I have been able to witness the strength within our own campus community as we have reacted to and processed Kate's passing. As soon as the news spread, folks from all over our school reached out, came together, and supported our department in any way they could. This memorial, what you are seeing here, is an act of respect and service for Kate and her legacy. Almost every entity at this college, from campus graphics to our winery to our IT department, pitched in to make this happen. The English department thanks all of you as you have collectively made this difficult time a little easier. Kate was involved with so much, and her reach was vast. I didn't know the extent of her work on this campus and in the larger community until she passed. After hearing countless stories about how she mentored someone or served on an important committee, I found myself asking if she ever slept. I honestly don't know how one human could have done so much. She was that tireless and that special. I first met Kate when I became a new full-time faculty member here in 2016. I was dealing with an unhealthy case of imposter syndrome, and I was really intimidated by her. She had a booming voice, and she used really big words that I didn't know. And she seemed to be able to peer into my soul and see me for the fraud I thought I was. But as I got to know her, I realized how truly kind she was. She always thought of others and brought the conversation back to them. She always reminded us to make ethical and socially just decisions. She was, to quote my colleague Chalise, our moral compass. She was a truly good person, one who always strove to do the right thing. The world would be a better place if we had more people like Kate in it. One of the finest compliments that Kate bestowed upon me during our friendship happened just this semester. During a rather heated department discussion, we have a lot of those, about returning to in-person teaching, Kate took a beat, looked at me and said, "Janae, you're scrappy." I realized at that moment that I had earned Kate's respect, and that is something I will cherish for the rest of my life. Kate worked at Hancock for 25 years, nurturing thousands of students and collaborating with hundreds of colleagues along the way. She lived to teach, and I was convinced that we would have to pry her out of the classroom when she was in her 90s. Unfortunately, we were not that lucky, and she left us too soon. I asked our department to share some memories and thoughts about Kate, and I, in turn, wanted to share them with you. From Chalise Ying Hood. Kate was an unquestionably brilliant scholar and committed instructor, but what I admired most about her was her integrity and compassion for all. She was pissed off, not because she was angry, but she believed that we, as a society, could do better. She reminded us every day to be better, empathize more, and although she was gone, she lives on in the thousands of students and people in the community she has inspired. Since Kate's passing, I hear her voice telling me loudly and with multiple expletives, "Speak up, the world needs more fighters." From Kelly Cohn, I can't begin to list all the ways I will miss Kate, or all the ways she made an impact on me. Kate opened my mind, expanded my knowledge, and challenged my thinking many times over. While I can say that she was the smartest person I ever met, And while I will miss our conversations on topics in information literacy, fake news, ethics and technology, and pedagogical practices, I'm going to miss the random chats more than anything. Chats in her yard about Judy Woodruff's hair, emails titled Internet Thoughts, book recommendations, book recommendations, book recommendations, drinking together on Zoom, and all of the out of the blue, just thinking about you kind of babble we had. I'm having a hard time imagining what our department in college will be like without her. I'm going to miss working with her as a colleague, of course, but most of all, I'm going to miss my friend Kate. From Julie Knight, Impressions of Kate. Kate at the English department chair seat, hand clasped on the desk, twisting the rings on her fingers, talking through a situation. Kate using a 10-minute narration to get to a one-sentence question. Can I use Zoom for my office hours? Yes, Kate, you can. Kate in an email conversation using a word I did not know. Kate at the top of her staircase an hour after getting home from cancer surgery, smiling, pontificating, finally retreating to her room at Amy's upteenth insistence. Kate when she stepped in a cow pie at Bob's Ranch. Kate at the podium, mini podiums. Kate and students sitting in a circle in L203 getting deep into the issues of equity. The truth I believe, Kate loved fully, and though I want more of it, it was enough for me to know her, enough for me to pass it on. I wanted to close with a poetry reading. If you don't like poetry, you might be out of luck because you're going to hear a lot of it today. The poem I chose is called Final Notations, which is a sonnet by Adrienne Rich. She was a queer feminist writer. Rich took the sonnet form and in a very Kate-like fashion, blew it up. Kate was a fan of Rich's writings and much of her academic research focused on her work. Final Notations. It will not be simple. It will not be long. It will take little time. It will take all your thought. It will take all your heart. It will take all your breath. It will be short. It will not be simple. It will touch through your ribs. It will take all your heart. It will not be long. It will occupy your thought. As a city is occupied, as a bed is occupied, it will take all your flesh. It will not be simple. You are coming into us who cannot withstand you. You are coming into us who never wanted to withstand you. You are taking parts of us into places never planned. You are going far away with pieces of our lives. It will be short. It will take all your breath. It will not be simple. It will become your will. Thank you.
In the past few years, whenever I found myself dismayed by the state of our country, I would wander down the hall to Kate Adams's office, knowing that she could help me put events in a larger perspective. On one of those occasions, Kate reminded me of the poet Walt Whitman and his celebration of all that is America in Leaves of Grass. I'd like to start this remembrance of Kate by returning to Whitman, who wrote, "I am large, I contain multitudes." Kate contained multitudes. Today, I'd like to share some of those multitudes that defined my friend and colleague, Kate Adams. I guess I could take that off, sorry. One of those multitudes that defined Kate was her role as a community activist. It only made sense that she found herself at a community college as she embraced the concept of community with all of her heart. Outside the college, she served as a board member and active member of groups like Cause, served as a representative for the county's redistricting committee, and was involved in Santa Maria Pride. On campus, she was faculty advisor for the Gay Straight Alliance and co-led the Teaching, Learning, and Social Justice Group and worked tirelessly for the rights of Dreamers. I admired her commitment to ensuring that everyone should be treated fairly. Another one of Kate's multitudes was her ability to play the role of alchemist. She brought people together, whether for a book club, her Salon G, an ad hoc faculty group formed to tackle campus issues, or her regular poker parties. Kate drew people to her house, where magical relationships were formed out of baser metals. I always felt at home in Kate's house and looked forward to playing the next night of poker. We did play poker, but what I really remember was the fellowship that followed. It wasn't serious poker, and sometimes we spent more time telling stories or sipping coffee or eating chocolate than dealing cards, though Kate did love to play those cards. One time she found a book, Kate always could find a book, of odd card games. And that night, Texas Hold'em took a back seat to games like Acey Deucey, Low Chicago, baseball, and the scandalously named Screw Your Neighbor. Kate peppered the table with nonsensical poker maxims, like a pair of deuces seldom loses. But they usually do. I do wish that I could turn to her just one last time and tell her, I never bluff, only to have her call a large pot and lose, and then follow up with one of her explosive laughs. You remember those, right? Ha! Multitude 3. Kate had an incredible and agile mind. Nobody talked through an issue like Kate. When Kate argued a point, she argued not to win, but to figure out what was right. She felt obligated to look at every issue through as many perspectives as possible, seeing through the eyes of others. Too often these days, people let their thinking be defined by whatever camp they're in. Kate was the rarest of individuals who could enter an argument, make her point, listen to another person's perspective, and come away saying, let's go with your idea. Often by the time she finished talking, she'd managed to change her own mind about what she believed. The ability to think through a complex issue in real time demands confidence, incredible intelligence, and a focus on always doing what's right. Kate was also a lover of language. Our former colleague Thomas Sadowski said that Kate flexed language the ways that athletes flex muscles before a match, the way that great birds flex wings before flight. He continued by saying, I loved watching Kate's eyes as she'd sift her brain for just the right word to facet a nuance she sought to express. I loved how, when she found the right words, Kate would smile and nod and repeat them, as if turning a phrase until I, too, could see how it catches light. Her love of language also made her a lover of books. Her house resembled the kind of independent bookstore one dreams of stumbling upon in a new city. Her lifelong love affair with books is legendary. And of course, so many of us were gifted books from Kate, perfectly curated by one of the world's greatest amateur librarians. I worked with Kate during 4 separate decades. She was larger than life. She did contain multitudes, many more than what I've just touched upon today. My heart goes out to her family, but sharing Kate's stories over this last week has reminded me that hers was a life to be celebrated. Thank you.
Thank you, Janae and Jim. Before we introduce our students, I do want to thank the team at Hancock College that put all this together, from our student leaders to our student services team, our facilities team that brought out all of the equipment you see here, our IT team who set up all of this stuff, and our academic technology team that has a live stream going for those who can't be here. Truly great work by them, and everybody said yes as soon as we said, can we get this done? And they said, we'll figure it out. So thanks to our team for doing that. We have 3 student speakers, and we're going to do the same thing to just come in order. We're going to start with Dalia Garcia, and then we're going to go to Maggie Knowlton, and then Katie Escobar-Jakulski. We'll round it out for our 3 student speakers. So Dalia, if you're ready. Are we missing Dalia? Then we'll go to Maggie.
I don't know how many people have actually been in Kate's classes and worked with her at the same time concurrently, but she wasn't always the most easy person to work with. But most passionate people are not. When you're passionate about your field, they don't let you slide at all. Kate's the first person, the first teacher in 20 years to give me a C on a paper. And that was okay, because at first I was frustrated. And after my husband stopped hiding the keys for the car so I wouldn't go ask her why, I calmed down and I really looked at her comments carefully, and it made me a better writer and a better student, and it challenged me. And when I finished that critical thinking class, I was a better person. I had never felt so accomplished. It made me a better academic writer, and it made me a better able to write my college entrance things that I had to do. After that, it was such a challenge that I proceeded to take all of her classes as a challenge, because I found that I liked being challenged by my teachers. I also got to work by her side for several semesters after that as her peer facilitator. And for lack of better terminology, Kate was a loud talker. I had taken all of her classes previously online, so I'd gotten to know her as a writer, and she was a fantastic writer. We had so many fantastic emails back and forth where we discussed the value of the Oxford comma versus a comma for pause. We disagreed on how it should be used. Thus, comma splice frequently featured on my papers. But that was okay because she was open to discussion. I remember one story in particular about Kate in class. She would stand at her podium and she would loudly bang on the podium, and she would say that she wasn't teaching, she was preaching an evangel of critical thought and rhetoric, and how important it was for students today to be able to critically think and to disseminate essays and to understand, so that they could replicate that, so that they could be able to also get their message out. And that spoke to me so deeply, because I have looked at institutions of learning almost like in a worshipful way, like this is my church as well. And she was up there preaching this message of hope. Dr. Kate was not a coddler, she was a cultivator, and I think many people respond to that. I know I did. If you're willing to put in the work, she would endlessly go over college applications, scholarship essays, and she would work next to you to make the narrative that would open hearts, minds, and hopefully wallets. I worked with many English department folks on my essays for UC Berkeley. However, only Dr. Kate would send me messages at 12:30 at night and tell me maybe I'd want to make my statement more compelling. I attribute Dr. Kate personally with the reason I was fully funded and accepted into UC Berkeley and into my cohort. Knowing my family's circumstances, she also offered opportunities for my son to have community services so that he was also able to get into UC Santa Cruz this last semester. She has left an indelible mark on our family in the form of education and opportunity. I have always found her advice invaluable, so much so that I find myself a little lost now that she's not here. I was still texting her last week about what classes I was taking, what classes I should choose next semester, and we were mutually geeking out about my reading list for my science fiction class. I can still quote her in personal essays to other new transfer students. Kate used to speak in bumper stickers, and anybody who took her classes knows that. You do not go to college alone. That is true. It is one of my favorites of her bumper stickers, and Kate has been such an influence on the trajectory of my life. I hope to someday be like her and teach at a community college. She has a way of making waves and changing people, and I am one of them. and I'm so grateful that she was part of my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak at this memorial in honor of Dr. Adams. I would like to extend my most sincere condolences to her family for your loss. She was an incredible human being. I met Dr. Adams in 2016, online for American literature. I would continue to have 2 more classes with her, spend numerous hours in her office, work with her in the writing center, and then at graduation, intentionally switch places with a classmate so that she could call out my name. I don't think I ever left her office without a handwritten book recommendation or a physical copy of the book itself. Dr. Adams was a fierce, passionate educator. She could see right through any bullshit. She was always honest, but she never held back any hard-earned praise. She would always be there for her students, sitting right in the front row of poetry recitations or cheering for us at graduation. It's impossible to summarize the huge, wonderful idea of everything Dr. Adams was, but what I can summarize are the important lessons she taught me. Number 1, re-examine all you have been told. Yes, that's a quote by Walt Whitman, but she lived it. In every class, she emphasized, do not accept a single narrative from others or yourself. Number 2, honor your labor. Don't expect your life to fit a cookie cutter. Your progress is worth honoring. Number 3, do what makes you happy. Life is too short to be miserable. And number 4, speak up for those in need, even if that person is yourself. Dr. Adams was a wonderful person and a dynamic educator worth learning from. She pushed me to see myself honestly and to trust the process of growth, which is a hard thing for a very impatient person like myself. I hope and pray that my actions reflect positively of the lessons she taught.
Kate was a social justice warrior and was involved in a number of organizations here in our community. And today we have a few that she was involved in to speak about the impact that she had. Speaking on behalf of the Fund for Santa Barbara, we have Associate Director Patricia Soloria. Speaking on behalf of CAUSE, we have Maristela Morales, the Executive Director. On behalf of SURGE, we have Leslie McGorman. On behalf of GRACE, we have Katie Novo, Cristina Gonzalez, Elsa Velasco, and Gary Clark. And on behalf of the Allen Hancock College Gay Straight Alliance, we have Alejandro Odmisalar.
Thank you. So first off, words from Marcos Vargas, who could not be here today. He's our executive director, and as associate director, I'm stepping in for him today. On behalf of the Fund for Santa Barbara, the board, the staff, grant-making committee, and youth-making change boards, I would like to offer our deepest condolences to Kate's family, friends, and colleagues. There just will never be another Kate. A longtime member of the Fund family for over 10 years, Kate served 6 years on our grant-making committee. She served on our board, including serving on the Board Governance Committee, and last year, the Vice President for North County. She was a very fierce advocate for elevating North County, and it was perfect that she could represent the North County on the board. She shared that with volunteers. She shared that she volunteered with the fund because its people and its mission are always challenging her to use her brain, change her mind, and cultivate her heart. She saw her role with the fund as part of her personal mission for progressive social change. Kate contributed greatly to the fund board through her deep wisdom, humor, and passion for the joyous struggle. I'd like to share several statements made by individual members of the fund's board. Our board president, Julie Hamilton, shared how much she will be missed. She won't be there at our next board meeting, or chiming in with the perfect poem, or stopping us all in our tracks by asking just the right pointed question. We've spent the past 18 months online, but her presence was deeply felt in every gathering, virtual and in person. She will be missed, and we all now have an obligation to keep her legacy alive. Long-term board member Ted Rhodes shared, Kate Adams leaves an incredible loud silence in her wake. A silence full of energy, activism, guts, insatiable curiosity, humor, compassion, and hope for the future. A silence full of thoughtful premises, probing questions, and a love of the written word. Metaphors, similes, Oxford commas, and all. While a very active member of the board, possibly one of Kate's lasting contributions to the fund was in our recent strategic planning process, where she co-wrote the fund's values statement. This line to me expresses Kate's commitment to the work that we all engaged in. We envision a community free of exploitation and oppression, one marked by optimism, joyous struggle, and a spirit of problem solving, and a sense of belonging. Kate brought her passion and commitment to social justice throughout the many aspects of her life, whether on the fund's board or as a professor here at the college, or her role as a community leader and activist. No, there will never be another Kate Adams, but there will always be a part of Kate in each of us, her that inspires us to the joyous struggles and to make this a more just and loving world.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. I'm Marisela Morales, Executive Director of CAUSE, and thank you to her family for that. I'll be keeping you in my prayers. So Kate was on our board of directors for only a short time, and about a year into her service, we were checking in, and she asked me, Marisela, I really don't know what I'm contributing, and I wonder, whether I should remain on the board. And I think that's a testament, another different testament of Kate. As an organization that was founded and led and is staffed by first and second generation immigrants, mostly Latinx, her insight and her curiosity on our board made a big difference. So I have a poem for Kate, White Flowers. Last night in the fields, I lay down in the darkness to think about death. But instead, I fell asleep, as if in a vast and sleeping room, filled with those white flowers that open all summer, sticky and untidy in the warm fields. When I woke in the morning light in front of the stars, and I was covered with blossoms. I don't know how it happened. I don't know if my body went diving down under the sugary vines in some sleep-sharpened affinity with the depths, or whether that green energy rose like a wave and curled over me, claiming me in its husky arms. I pushed them away, but I didn't rise. Never in my life had I felt so plush or so slippery or so resplendently empty. Never in my life had I felt myself so near that porous line where my own body was done with, and the roots and the stems and the flowers began. So Kate, I'll meet you amongst the stems and the flowers where you begin.
Good afternoon. I am speaking on behalf of the Santa Maria chapter of Showing Up for Racial Justice, and we want to extend our deepest condolences to Kate's family and to each of you whose lives she touched. The profound loss of Kate Adams. And while it's very sad, Kate would have liked that we used it as a reason to come together in community. Back in 2019, at the behest of someone we care very much about, Kate and I and 6 others gathered for the first time to form the group that would become Showing Up for Racial Justice, or SURGE. SURGE's purpose is to organize white people to, as Kate once put it, investigate white supremacy and white privilege in ourselves, and to follow the leadership of Black, Indigenous, and people of color-led organizations working for racial justice, of introspection and external examination with the grace and enthusiasm and curiosity that she had for so many things. She always came to this work with a sense of urgency, always reminding us that no matter how difficult the work, the price for not doing it is too high. And young people and their ability to lead us to a more just society. I will miss so many things about Kate, and it has brought me a little bit of joy to hear them already uttered today. Her welcoming us into the fold, into the circle, into the community. But she demanded that in return, each of us work toward bringing justice and fairness into this world. She made a great cocktail. She had a book for every situation, and she got the very best twinkle in her eye whenever she was conspiring to get you to do something bold. For her, that was often. I believe that what Kate would want from each of us is to commit wholeheartedly to creating a community in which no one is left behind. Please join me in honoring her legacy by lending a hand or doing something that's scary. As Kate often said, take risks, make mistakes, learn, and keep going. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Kate Adams pushed for LGBT visibility wherever she went, as you all know very well. From her youth documented by her CD collection titled Songs for My Lesbian Youth, very extensive collection, her academic life in Texas, in San Jose, and her work and life here in Santa Maria and the Central Coast. In 2009, she inspired and supported many of us in becoming LGBTQ plus advocates here in very conservative Santa Maria. Roughly half of our group were not out to our families, friends, and co-workers. We created the name GRACE, Gay Rights Advocates for Change and Equality, because the acronym sounded like a spiritual group instead of a queer one. So we could meet and feel comfortable meeting together with people and not be afraid that others would know. As a group, we work to create safe spaces for folks to live as themselves. Kate was always a part of it. Through Grace, Kate organized Salon G, a book club named after the salons of Gertrude Stein that she would host in her home in the early 20th century. Salon G continues today and hopefully now in her honor, and I know there are some members here today. Here at Hancock, she loved supporting students and the administration in creating the first Gay Straight Alliance and increasing awareness on campus. Kate was a mentor, an ally, a friend, and to many of us, including myself, a part of our chosen family. How lucky we are to have had a Kate grace us with her presence and love.
In art history, there's a term called the Stendhal syndrome, a phenomena where one is essentially paralyzed by wonderment and emotionality over what's before them. Taking in Kate Adams for the first time will do that to you. I don't need to explain what that's like, because I know you're with me in that. Kate was monumental in her spoken word and in her staunch queerness. So for us, our small queer organization in a small town, a bunch of ne'er-do-wells, to have someone as grand as Kate sitting at the table with us, planning Harvey Milk Days, Queer Taco Tuesdays, and rodeo parties, and moving I can only liken to something like James Baldwin working your 5th grade bake sale. She's the reason why so many of us believe in ourselves and what we can do together, why we feel compelled to gather to help and be present. She inspires me to get back to my community and keep organizing, no matter how small, even if it's just a bake sale. Somebody needs it. On a personal level, she was a part of my most important chosen family. I saw her as my queer mother, father, spiritual guide. I'll never be the same. And finally, lastly, I want to thank the Solonistas for always showing up for Kate.
So my name is Gary Clark, and I met Kate through Grace. I was not one of the organizers of Grace, so I'm very privileged to be standing up here with them. But I got enough time with Kate that I knew. So I very quickly recruited her to the Santa Barbara Lesbian and Gay Film Festival called Outrageous, where we deliberated over films. And Kate was always very deliberate and always came up with the perfect words to be persuasive about films that she thought were important for us to screen for the community. One of those films that we deliberated over was a film about gay men who befriend lesbians. And the title of the film was called Lesbros. Perfect words. She did not have this word, which is the word I describe for our relationship, and that is that we had a lesbromance. And the foundation of that relationship was really our desire and striving for beloved community that is inclusive of the queer community. And I just want to thank and not making me feel dumb while doing that. I don't know what else to say other than
Gracias, Kate. Thank you, Kate. We love you.
I'd say good afternoon, but I don't know if that's quite the right phrase. My name is Alejandro Midsalar. I was on faculty here at Hancock. I was lucky enough to know Kate. They mentioned my name, apologies. They mentioned my name in regards to the Gay-Straight Alliance on campus here, but I can't really take any credit for that. That was really Kate's work and the work of all the students involved. I'm here for the same reason that we're all here. I miss Kate Adams. I mourn her. We all do. I was lucky enough, though, to team teach a course of her design, and that course was called Ideas of Difference in American Literature. The class, without a doubt, like everything else she did, was an outgrowth of her tireless activist bent. Not twisting arms or shaming people or performing some kind of ephemeral moral superiority. The tagline of the course was Pitch Perfect, Kate. And it was a question. And the question was, would you rather have an enemy or a conversation? That question, like I said, is Pitch Perfect, Kate. It really encapsulates everything that we all loved about her. A fierce arguer, a true listener, a practitioner of an openness and an empathy that sometimes inspired awe and a few moments of embarrassment in me. Kate had the guts of a fighter pilot. She had the mind of a chess grandmaster, and admittedly, people have already touched on it, she had the vocabulary of a grizzled sea captain. But all of which she used to do the work. More than anything, that's who Kate Adams was. She was someone who did the work. I mourn Kate Adams, but I celebrate Kate Adams by being with all of you. We must celebrate Kate Adams by being there for each other, by showing up for the students and the communities that we all serve in our respective capacities, even and especially when we're tired and it's hard and there's literally everything else in the world that we might want to do. We would have expected anything less from us. Thank you.
And now we're moving to the family tribute. Often after late city council meetings, I would head over to Kate's house to unwind and debrief and have a chuckle over an old fashioned. And during those evenings, she would often talk about her children and how proud she was of them. And so I'm happy to invite up to the stage Matthew and Ann Betts.
I would like to start by thanking all of you for being here today. And for those of you who may not know me, I'm Matthew, Kate's son. And sitting next to me is my sister, Deanna. It's just like Kate to give me one more writing assignment. So here goes nothing. Kate was light. Kate was love. Kate was kindness. Kate was my second mom. When I was a kid, we were sitting at the dinner table, and I had mentioned that I didn't like the term stepmom. Instead, I decided that mom number 2 would be what I would call her. But she was so much more than the person that I am today. For every book I read now, I can thank my literary superhero, Kate, who encouraged me to read. And she handed me my first comic book, and the rest is history. So, for every politics podcast I hear, protest march I participate in, and ballot I submit, I can thank Kate. My interests in politics and the reason I chose to advocate for those who are usually underrepresented starts with her. When my sister and I were younger, she taught us to recognize our privilege and to be grateful for what we have. And to not only be grateful, but to act and stand for what is right. We marched for gay rights. We marched in unison with the farm workers who worked the strawberry fields, and participated in the Women's March, and so much more. She also made you feel heard. And some of the best moments I ever had were the phone conversations that started with a few questions and lasted for many hours. Conversations and memories that I hold so dear to my heart will remain with me forever. And I invite you all to hold your memories of Kate. I'm here representing Kate's immediate family, but to Kate made a family with every person she met. Everyone here and everyone watching is family. Thank you for being here. Now I'd like to introduce or give the floor for some poetry from the English department. Thank you.
Forgiveness Sonnet. Forgive me between the lines. Forgive me for missing the small cartoon of your face rendered in ballpoint pen. Forgive me for not imagining it. For all my failures of imagination, forgive me. And for my feeling inadequate when across the room from me I find you, achingly beautiful. Forgive me for not finding you just across the room. Let me keep looking. Let me fall on every dropped breadcrumb for messages. Cohen's for coming back out of the forest, trailing gratitude. Forgive me for the small pool of forgiveness in my heart. Forgive me its dry seasons. Lace your fingers through my fingers and stand here with me, waiting for rain.
We know that Kate loved the poem in the pocket, so I folded it up and to honor her. On behalf of the library, I know we deeply feel the loss of our friend, but as you've heard, she loved reading, she loved books, so to honor her, as the bookmark says, please read a fucking book. This poem by Kate is called Things Stay Where They Are. Things stay where they are, especially books, which can live where they're left through a child's whole life as an infant, can be dumb loyal to their shelf mates, or even in boxes, until moves and removes. And much sundering later, lifted to new shelves, one gives up, slips silent. Floating to the floor, a photo of you laughing at 2 in those orange pajamas. Gums in a tooth, smiley bald, sitting on that Euro trike we ordered from a catalog in the apartment on College Avenue. Thank you.
This is something Kate tried to get me to do 1,000 times, and I always refused. Nothing to undo, Kate Adams. But better? Oh, yes.
So we're coming to the close, and we want to thank you all, and we could probably stay here for the rest of the evening with great stories. I've got another 2 hours worth of stories I'd be happy to share, but we want you to be able to mingle with each other. And so Gloria is going to introduce our last speaker to close us out. I want to remind you, those stories, as you've thought about a story, please go to the video booth. Even if you went and you thought of another one, go tell them again, and that will be shared with the family. And if it's okay with the family, we'll share that with the campus. We want you to stay and linger. We have time for you to stay here on the plaza, and we're grateful that you all came, and we're grateful for the team that put this together, and for all the family and friends. So Gloria, if you'll introduce our last speaker.
Kate was an amazing professor, a loving mother and partner, but she was also an amazing friend. And we have what we call a tribe. And to close
You're going to get me started crying before I even start. Hello, everyone. My name is Hazel. It's so moving to see how many lives Kate impacted. And while we grieve the loss of our dear friend, I'm grateful to be in company with such powerful community. Since learning of Kate's passing, I've spent time reflecting on what she'd want her legacy to be, what she'd need us to do in order to make that possible. And I remembered at a time that Kate and I spoke about what activities have heart for her. She shared a Hebrew phrase, tikkun olam, which means repair of a tattered world. I couldn't think of clearer marching orders, words to live by. This is the mission we've inherited, repairing a tattered world. Kate's passing came so unexpectedly. I compare this experience with reading the most enthralling book to only learn that the last pages are torn away from you before you get the chance to finish. Yet after witnessing beautiful testimonies today and over this last week about how Kate inspired all of us, it's clear to me that we have the chance to write the last pages in Kate's story. Through being agents for change, rabble-rousers, public servants, we honor her memory. I met Kate when I was 14 at a meeting for the Valuing Diversity Work Group. It was one of the first group of social justice activists I met here in Santa Maria. Throughout the years, as I became more integrated into youth leadership, advocated for immigrant rights, was such a community builder for the LGBTQ community, and also worked to make sure social justice organizations were funded. She was everywhere. Kate and I got closer in 2018 when we helped our friend run for city council. Kate opened her home for campaign meetings, made sure there were toys for my daughter so I could be present even with the kid in tow. She led me crafting moving speeches and proofreading campaign literature. And what I remember most was every meeting, she'd make space for our friend, then candidate, to vent about the challenges of running for office, making an emotional connection before drilling down to business. That was Kate's style, in the struggle, doing the work, all while fostering friendships and camaraderie. Kate brought such attention and care to her friendships. She also brought a joyful candor to her friendships as well. You've heard already, Kate, you already heard that Kate, you heard someone talk earlier about how Kate had a special way of arguing, even with herself. I laughed because, believe it or not, I'd actually enjoy our disagreements, especially about political strategy. Kate once called herself a reliable ass. When Kate took issue with something I said, she'd stop me, ask me to explain my position, interrogate me even, try on my perspective, and then sprinkle a dash of hers. Through those experiences, I left learning something not only from her perspective, but got clearer on my own thoughts. Kate had a way of doing that, the teacher in her. In addition to her other identities, Kate was a proud mother. When asked the question, what would you need to achieve in order to feel satisfied and consider your life well lived? She said, I want the 3 children that I have co-parented to be to engage rather than ignore the circumstances that create it. I'd say Kate's mission was to make sure all of us around her were disturbed by injustice. She believed so strongly in fighting for justice, in disrupting racism, in undoing the systems that keep our most disenfranchised communities oppressed. I got the privilege to see Kate just 2 weeks before her passing, a bonfire with friends. Between s'mores and sips of whiskey, she shared distress about our country's response to the pandemic. A regular conversation amongst many of us. But what was different about Kate was the sustained outrage. Many of us have come up against a wall, allowing the numbness or despair to drown us out. But she never ceased to be outraged. We cannot let Kate's efforts be in vain. We all must try. Work for justice wherever we can. Be better. We can honor her legacy every day. That to read a book instead of scroll mindlessly at the end of the day. When we speak up, even when it's hard. When we offer our time, talents, and effort to social causes in our community. This is how we give her story the ending it deserves. Thank you, Kate, for your lifelong dedication to justice, for your teaching, for letting us have a glimpse into your beautiful heart. Rest in power, dear friend, Professor.
This is the part where y'all go hug each other, have a glass of wine in Kate's memory, and enjoy the evening in each other's company. That's what she would have wanted. Thank you.
Shirt on a brown man, that blue bit by yellow against brown. Already that morning she'd had sleep broken clean in the Chamois-Long sluice, all the stoplights, a breeze with birds in it, headlines that made her laugh, and coffee carried with her own hands to work she had not planned on enjoying. Not one lost thought. So why, as she stood on her bike and came down through the gears, as she followed her legs and her slight groan of muscle, pleasant ache of remembrance, candle lit for the body, so why not? A brown man defined by a doorway, a shirt the color of thin evening skies, a fabric like jazz, like lime, like light inside water, or the tongue around wine as you swallow, as you open your lips again and again, as you speed by, a green bike, a brown man, blue bit by yellow.
Wow. Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
Tell us about that poem. What's your inspiration for that?
I was happy.
You're happy.
Yes, I was. I was happy. And I knew pretty early, and this is a lucky thing, I knew pretty early that what I wanted to do, which was to study language, right? So I stayed in school and I got a lot of degrees in English. Then I got a big fat degree in American Studies, and then I continued. I've been in classrooms really as a student or as an instructor almost my whole life. And that was a piece of grace given to me by sort of figuring out early what I wanted to do. That's not always possible. And so I feel kind of happy that that happened to me.
Happy birthday! I have lovely friends. Lovely friends.